And so your mind is just absorbing whatever is playing. It's the TV mind, which is receiving stuff from wherever it comes from, is going into your mind, and you become no longer thinking your own thoughts. Occasionally you might, you say, oh, this guy is so stupid, and then you're watching again. What do you think about Facebook? Is it a healthy format? It seems a bit egoic. Not a whole lot of transmission of connection, love, etc. Posting pictures of yourself and quantifying friends, likes, etc. seems like enhancing the ego. Are we going down the wrong path with social media? Well, the questioner has a point. As even before the advent of Facebook and similar things for hundreds of years or thousands of years, people constructed for themselves an identity in their head. That's me and my story, as I sometimes call it. And that was partly inherited from what your culture tells you are, or your family and your culture, and partly by choice, certain things you choose to identify with and then incorporate into your sense of self. Certain possessions, certain achievements, or the lack of certain possessions and achievements can all be incorporated. They become mind forms or thought forms, which you identify with. So there's a mental image that forms, and that's the essence of ego. A mental image, that's me. So that's been going on for a long time, and then people live through that mental image of me. They seek out things or people that can improve the mental image of me and try to keep away things or people that could weaken or threaten the mental image of me. It all means not being in touch with who you are beyond any mental image, which is why we are here, to go deep into that. And now we got the technology of Facebook, where you can externalize the image, and you can create on the Facebook page, you can create the image of me and show it to the whole world. And so many young people, and maybe even not so young, I believe the oldest Facebook user, I saw a video clip in the States, the world's oldest Facebook user is 105 years old. And it is often used unconsciously in enhancing the image one has of oneself and the image one wants to show to the world. And then you read other people's images on their Facebook page and you think that's who they are. And then you try to compete with that image, and you try to polish up your image and compete with them. Most people want to show off, it seems. I'm not that familiar with it, but most people want to show the good things. I'm having this great meal, here's a picture of it. Why would anybody want to see what you're eating right now? But they do, it seems. Or I just bought this thing, you want to see it, and then you can connect people to a place where you bought it. It's another thing, and all kinds of things that I don't understand. So you can, in many cases, it becomes an artificial construct that you add to every day, and everybody else has their artificial construct, and it can actually strengthen the delusion of the false self. It doesn't have to, but often it does. Facebook can also be used in conveying interesting information and to connect with people at a deeper level, or bringing about some spiritual knowledge. So that's not impossible. I used to post occasionally things. I don't do it myself, but I would send it to Steve and he would post it, but I must admit I haven't done it in a while. Although some things do get posted, quotes and so on, that's fine. Twitter is another one that is there's a Twitter message coming in. The last time I tweeted was when a few months ago, in February, the Oprah channel in the States, I don't know if you can get it here, it's called the OWN channel, Oprah Winfrey Network. They showed a repeat of our webinar that we did a few years ago, that I did with Oprah. They did a slightly shortened, edited version over a period of 10 weeks, 10 Sundays. A New Earth was shown again, on this time not on the internet, but well, also on the internet, but on TV. And Oprah sometimes is an active tweeter, and she said it would be great if we could tweet at the same time while this program is being shown. And so I said, okay, I'll see what I can do. So I was on the phone with Steve while the program was running, and then I was watching it, and then people sent in these questions, and they have to be answered immediately. So I was attempting to dictate answers to Steve and his assistant to put in the answers, and my mind was quite. I felt almost dizzy afterwards because I tried to watch the program and at the same time watch the incoming tweets and think of an answer. But Oprah must have realized it wasn't from me, because she said Twitter is the exact opposite of how you operate. And before Oprah said it, Kim said exactly the same thing to me. And that's true. So I was glad when it was over, but while it was happening, I was surrendered to it, although I did feel dizzy afterwards. So if you can avoid constructing some pseudo-identity for yourself on Facebook and be more real, then you can avoid that trap of just the Facebook amplifying the human ego, which it does in many, many cases, especially for youngsters who have no idea what they're doing. Oh, yes. Can you speak about how to be in this world with this constant push for connectivity? How did we get to the most profound things from a relatively simple question? Oh yes, we talked about doing and being, without feeling that being present is another thing to do. How to be in this world without this constant push for connectivity? Well, the first thing is you turn off your push notifications. That's already a big step forward. And you need to be disciplined in the use of your device, your phone, whatever, tablet, phone, so that it doesn't take you over, because it's simply an extension of the mind. And if it wasn't enough before we invented these devices, humans had already been taken over by their minds. Even 2,000 years ago, not as much as now, but even 2,000 years ago, Jesus said, "Why are you always thinking about tomorrow? Why are you always worried about the next thing? Look at the flower, look how it lives, in total alignment with the present moment, and it's being sustained by the one consciousness." That's my translation of the. So already then, humans had been taken over by mind, but even more so since then, mind has proliferated, and then the clever human mind came up with these devices. Said, let's extend ourselves into the realm of things, and then we can create this, which is an extension of the human mind. So when you might have noticed, when you're with yourself, you have the voice in the head. Unless you begin to awaken, in which case you're able to experience spaces of alert, still presence. It's beautiful. But otherwise, you have this thing, commenting, talking, arguing. And then this becomes a burden for many people. Of course it is a burden, because a lot of the stuff it says is actually not pleasant. And so you experience it as a burden, and since you derive your sense of identity from it, it becomes yourself. This talking voice, you think that's you. It becomes the self. And you walk around with this burden of the self. And in order to unburden yourself, one thing you can do, you think you can do, is you can watch the television, or you can go on to watch. There are countless things that you can watch on the little screen. The entire world's knowledge at your fingertips. And the moment you watch the screen, whether it's television or on the screen, you might have noticed that your so-called own thought processes come to a stop. So to some extent, you're free of the self. This is why people sometimes find watching television relaxing. Say, okay, I just need to relax now, let's turn it on. By this they mean, while they watch the television screen, they are not burdened by their self-induced thought processes. What they do, however, they replace their own thoughts with the collective thoughts. So you're not in a state of thoughtless awareness when you watch television or you watch something on the screen. You absorb the thoughts from there into your mind, and you link into. So for people often in a state of semi or hypnosis when they watch, and it kind of paralyzes you. It can also happen with the screen, with television already started, of course. I don't know whenever 60 years ago, whenever television started, and you go, and so your mind is just absorbing whatever is playing. It's the TV mind, which is receiving stuff from wherever it comes from, is going into your mind, and you become no longer thinking your own thoughts. Occasionally you might, you say, oh, this guy is so stupid, and then you're watching again. And then another thought, why am I watching this rubbish? Half an hour later, this is so awful. But you can't turn it off. Here's the remote. Let's just try one more channel. There might be something else there. Oh no, that's stupid. Try one more. This is how an addict behaves, and the device is even more addictive. Because you carry them with you, and you may have to admit that there is an addiction in you. Not everybody here, but quite a few. It would be almost normal to feel this draw towards it, and you use it even when you don't need to use it. That's the amazing thing. When you're standing at the elevator, waiting, so another person is standing next to you, and he or she is pulling out the phone, and then you pull out yours. You don't know why. or anywhere, you're ordering a tea or coffee somewhere, and you're standing in line. And if you look around, there's almost nobody, and probably nobody, who is not looking at this little thing. This is scary. 30 years ago, it was just radio and television, and people would sit there for hours. But nowadays, you have countless sources of stimulus for the mind that draws you into continuously thinking about what's your next Facebook post, what's it going to be, and you look at the ones that are coming in, all these people are doing these fantastic things, and me, I'm just sitting here, and then you have to pretend that you are also doing fantastic things. And usually it involves taking a nice selfie, and then you project your self-image, which has existed for a long, long time before in humans. This part of ego is to have this image of who I am. But in these Facebook, now you have the opportunity to project that image into the world, and it'll reach hundreds or thousands of people all at once. And then you construct your life. There are many people alive these days who, without knowing it, they partly live for their Facebook image. And they're just looking for the next thing that they can project out into the world. It's Narcissus. You might remember the myth of Narcissus, the ancient Greek myth. There was this young man who had never seen himself before because they didn't have mirrors at the time. But one day he happened to look into a little pool of water, and he saw himself, and he realized that he was extremely beautiful. He said, "Oh, that's me." And the story goes, he fell in love with himself. Not in a good way. Not by becoming one with who he is, but the separation happened. This myth shows the beginning stage of the egoic sense of self, expressed as a story. The image that he saw of himself in a pool is the mental image of the egos, and stories are part of that image. That's me. I'm me and my story. So you have the image of me, and then, So this guy, Narcissus, he experienced that separation. And then I think something bad happened to him, but I don't remember what. And then you have other things that continuously stimulate the mind, that almost designed for you not to become still. It's like the civilization has made a great effort to come up with as many things as possible to prevent people from becoming still and spacious, and taking a moment of looking at the sky and feeling the inner spaciousness arise, and becoming aware of the leaves of the tree or the branches and the wind blowing and the noise of water, the simple thing, becoming still, alert, sensing that stillness within. And of course, a minute later, another text message is coming in. Of course, you have to look at it immediately. And then I'm told, I didn't know that when I first started using text, Erin told me that the etiquette is that you have to reply immediately. And emails are coming in too. Oh dear. I must be very important. I'm getting all these messages. In my everyday life, I find peace and connection to the universe. Here at this retreat, with birds in cages, noise, junk food, blah, blah, or something like that, I am finding it hard to connect to that peace. How would you cope if you had to live in a disco for a week? Let's just address there are two parts to this. One is the part of here, not living in these unusual surroundings, not your usual, perhaps more sedate and peaceful surroundings. How would you cope? Okay, that's a hypothetical situation that's very unlikely to ever happen to me. But if it did, there are two possibilities, of course. One is you open the door and go out and leave, and then you're at peace. If you can't be at peace in the disco, my choice would be to open the door and step outside and leave. But if the doors are locked, I suppose that's what you're talking about. The doors are locked and I can't get out. What's left is surrender, so I would probably start dancing. And the same here, there's a clash between what makes you feel comfortable. You perhaps live in a quiet place and you're not usually surrounded by sun-bathing tourists. And birds in cages. I haven't seen them, but they must be around. And junk food. Of course, you don't have to eat it, but it's quite good for retreats to be. I haven't yet, by the way, found an ideal retreat setting. One would have thought that going to an ashram in India would be more conducive to inner peace than being in a big hotel in Hawaii. But there too you'll find things that disturb your peace. For example, my first night in an ashram in India, you're on this bed, and I was given a deluxe room, as they call it. They said the Queen of Spain had also spent some time in that room. So you're lying on your bed. The temperature is just 1 degree less than at midday. Extremely hot under a mosquito net. And then sleep doesn't come. At 1:30 in the morning, the need to go to the toilet arises. But there are several huge mosquitoes sitting on the outside of the net, waiting for you to emerge. And then you just wait a little longer, and finally you have to get out. Being pursued by the mosquitoes, you run to the bathroom. And in the bathroom, suddenly a flutter arises, and there's a big bat flying around the ceiling. And finally you manage to get back under your mosquito net, and there's a little bit of sleep. And then at 4:30 there's a knock on the door. Oh no, that's not all, I forgot. At 2:30, there's in the street, there's a loudspeaker of very low sound quality, with some lovely religious chanting going on. Why are they chanting in the street through a loudspeaker at 2:30 in the morning? I don't know, but it's Ram, Ram, Ram. And in a way, it's lovely because they're chanting about God, and they don't. It doesn't matter if they wake people up. And then after 20 minutes, that subsides, and then there's a little bit of sleep. And at 4:30, there's a knock on the door, and a man. Get up, open the door. Of course, it's still dark. And a man comes with a bucket with hot water and said, "The hot water you ordered, it's 5:30. It's 4:30. I ordered it for 5:30. Of course, there's no point in saying, no, come back. No, you surrender. You have to surrender every moment so that you become one with whatever is in that moment. So you immediately adjust to that. You adjust to the mosquitoes not being able to sleep, or you become unhappy. And so you accept that the hot water comes at 4:30 instead of 5:30. And so it goes on. And then finally you go for breakfast in the big hall. You sit on the floor. There's a banana leaf on the floor, and a man comes with a huge bucket. What's in it? I don't know. And then a ladle, and he goes on your banana leaf. Flop. And it's wonderful. Continuous one becoming one with what is. And here you have the tourists and the parrot birds in cages and junk food. Probably the food on the banana leaf is more healthy in some ways. It's not junk food. On the other hand, there may be certain things in there that the Western body is not used to, which then results in very frequent visits to the bathroom. Wherever you go, there will be an opportunity for surrender rather than and that's part of the retreat, and it's part of really life, because wherever you go, you will find you'll get challenged by life. There'll be something that you need to surrender to, or you walk out. But very often you need to go with it, rather than having expectations how things should be. You go with how things are, the isness, I call it, the isness of things in the present moment. And if you can be one with the isness, whether it's the bat in the bathroom or whether it's the tourists here, then wherever you go, you can find peace. That really is the purpose for realizing that, and without saying conditions need to be in a certain way to be conducive. And if you could find the absolutely ideal place for a retreat, where everything works and everything is absolutely immaculate and perfect, the food is exquisite, the temperature is just right, you get massages every day in addition to the pampered in every need is immediately met. You just have to say something and somebody comes and yes, now you're totally undisturbed for meditation, absolutely perfect. Is that the ideal retreat? Not really. The imperfections are actually more helpful than the perfect conditions. In the ideal retreat or the ideal life, which doesn't exist, the life without challenges would be very similar to going to a movie in which there is no conflict. Everybody is peaceful, nothing really happens because there's no drama. The characters in the movie are not challenged by anything. And so the movie viewers would go, Titanic without the accident. A perfect crossing. 2.5 hours of that. But this is how people want their lives to be. They have this inner expectation, that's how it should be or can be. But it's not like that. And then you begin to welcome the challenges. It's actually fine. You don't demand that conditions should be perfect. They never are perfect. And if they are, you go to sleep. Or if they are not perfect for very long. Or you get so bored. Oh, there's a question here about what is boredom? So that's the next question. So you need to work on this in everyday life. Invite presence in ordinary situations that are not particularly challenging. For some people, even a red light, a traffic light is challenging. Having to wait in line somewhere is challenging. Why not use this precious moment and invite, become alert, feel the energy field in the inner body, and just be there as an observing presence. And then you have the 2 dimensions. You have sense perceptions, hearing, and you have the formless presence. So there's the light and that which appears in the light. It's always the same, the light of consciousness. So then you grow in presence power as you use all those situations that before were never good enough. You're always on your way somewhere better. Use those situations to bring presence in, and then that power grows in you. And if that it's only then if that power grows in you, of presence power, that you can deal with the heavy, let's call it, use an Eastern term, the karmic stuff. Those accumulations in you that are old patterns, some of which originating in your present lifetime, in childhood, but in many cases, patterns that go back a long way in time. Your ancestors acting out patterns that your ancestors acted out 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, and still the same conditioning. Or you can look at it in terms of whether you look at it in terms of genetics, that you things that come, or in terms of past lifetimes. Whatever approach you want to use is fine. The fact is, there are accumulations in you, there are patterns of unconsciousness that have been there a long time. We could call them karmic. Karmic meaning unconscious patterns that you usually identify with as yourself, that take you over completely. And the truth of the real karma is not the external events in your life. The external events in your life really trigger the karma that you carry inside, and they become your reactions. And your reactions determine how you experience your life. So in a way, you could have the same thing happening to one person, creating a certain response, and the same event happening to another person, creating a totally different response. I can have, for example, when I had just written my first book, the publisher said, why don't you sign some books for some famous people? They might give you an endorsement. So I did, and they were sent out, and almost nobody replied. And I didn't realize at the time that those famous people, how many books and manuscripts they get sent every week and every month. Now I'm getting them. And now I'm the one who doesn't reply. Because you just can't. It's impossible to read it all, even dipping in. They pile up. There's a backlog. I have now already several months of backlog to get through. So it's very hard, if not impossible. But I didn't know that. But fortunately, I didn't take it personally. Without having read the 4 agreements, I already knew this is not a personal thing. So it was not problematic, but I had some instances where people have sent me books and they got extremely upset because they didn't get a reply. And they get more and more upset, and the letters became more and more angry. And then I became the worst, dreadful person in the world. And those are old karmic patterns that people carry. The external event triggers the pattern. For some people, what becomes a huge drama for one person is an insignificant event for another. So how you experience your life is not really so much to do with what happens to you, but it's how you react, because every reaction determines the next thing that happens. So something goes wrong, you make drama out of it, and that creates more stuff. And this is how more karma gets created. How you react to a person determines how that person reacts to you. And so it's a reflection, in other words. You create, to a large extent, your life, not to a large extent completely, your life experience unconsciously. And so to break the old patterns that create so much suffering, unnecessary baggage, I sometimes call it, that you carry around with you, you interpret situations and people through the unnecessary baggage in your mind, that for that to be transcended or dissolved, that requires presence power. The presence needs to be there when the old patterns arise in your life. And that is there so you don't wait for the challenge and hoping that you can stay present, because you won't. Use it when you're not being challenged and invite presence into your life. In all those moments that are really precious, and that generates more than you. It's almost like the equivalent on the physical level would be working out. You get stronger, so to speak. Well, welcome to our meditation, if that's what it is. I said if that's what it is, because it's a word that can also be misleading and cause you to believe that there's a separate activity in your life, a regular activity that's called meditation, and that is the rest of your life. What is conventionally called meditation is more than just a practice, it's a state of consciousness. Or it's a question of semantics. You could say that meditation is a practice towards a state of consciousness, and it already becomes problematic because you're now working towards something. So what is conventionally called meditation is not an activity. It's not a doing. So you can't do a meditation. The very idea that you're doing a meditation is already the obstacle to true meditation. And true meditation is ultimately not trying to get somewhere, but already realizing that you are already there. It's the realization of being, which is prior to all doing. And it's always there, but usually for most humans it's not realized. Simply becoming aware that you are right now. And it's not concepts, not thoughts. You are not a thought. So any idea you have in your mind about who you are is ultimately false. Becoming aware that I am here and now. And that's the arising of spaciousness, inner spaciousness. And the strange thing is, that's always there. But if you're not aware of it, it is as if it were not there. In an analogy, one could say, you're a wealthy person who doesn't know it. And you're then poor. I use the analogy of somewhere in a book, Power of Now, maybe a man sitting on a box, a beggar sitting on a box for years, has never looked inside the box. And the box is full of gold, and it's his, but he didn't know it. Or you could have another amusing analogy and say that it's like the analogy, of course, when we use an analogy, we use something from the physical world to point to something that is beyond the physical universe. So we talk about gold because it's something precious in the physical world. That's how analogies work. So you could also say you're destitute and you don't know that you have a bank account in Switzerland with $100 million, or you've forgotten the number of your bank account. Well, nowadays Swiss bank accounts are not that popular anymore, but just an amusing analogy. It's overlooking something that's incredibly valuable. You can't even just say anything, nothing in the physical world would even compare. Although in analogies we use those things. Jesus used the pearl of great price and so on, again things from the physical world to point to something beyond. Just becoming aware of yourself, not as somebody, as a person, but becoming aware of yourself as, one could say, nobody. So you are both, everybody knows that they are somebody, but not that many people yet, except those who are awakening, know that at a deeper level, they are nobody. Nobody could also be called no form. On one level, you exist as form, physical form and psychological form, as the personality and the body. On another deeper level, you are the consciousness that's prior to form, but not separate from form. So spiritual awakening is becoming aware of yourself as just that spacious, formless presence, the light of consciousness. And that realization is inseparable from the present moment. And you could even say that what you are, or who or what you are in your essence, is the now, the present moment. Not what happens in it, but the space of now. The most dreadful fate is to be trapped in your personality, not knowing there's anything beyond that, no transcendent and complete unawareness of any transcendent dimension within yourself. And then you carry the burden of a personality all your life, the burden of yourself. Troublesome, anxious, angry, depressed, fearful, dissatisfied, always a sense of something missing, always looking to some other moment in the future for some kind of fulfillment. And then reaching the end of your life, and it wasn't very enjoyable, and you never really found yourself. Every life is problematic. Occasionally, brief periods may arise in your life when you feel everything is great, and then very quickly new challenges, new problems arise. It's more normal for life to be problematic than to be free of problems. In fact, externally, life never ceases to be challenging. Almost as if some screenwriter, script writer or author in the sky, infinitely creative, would always come up with some new obstacle to put in your path. Whatever form it may take. And if you solve one problem, another one crops up somewhere else. Or the very solution, the very way in which you solved the problem, if it was done without wisdom, creates two new ones that are both worse than the original problem. And I just said, in the absence of wisdom, if you try to solve a problem without this essential element that is not ultimately intelligence, not intelligence that is measured in IQ tests, but something, because that's a limited form of intelligence, the IQ intelligence. There's more to intelligence, and the real intelligence is wisdom. And that can only arise if you know the transcendent dimension within yourself. If you're aware of that inner spaciousness, that stillness in the background, even while you're talking, even while you're perceiving things, even while you're walking or driving. You can sense the beingness that you are, the I am, the spacious stillness in the background, even while in the foreground you deal with things, you think, you do. But you're connected to the transcendent dimension, which is the essence of who you are. And if you're connected to the transcendent dimension, you will still be faced with challenges, but the way in which you meet those challenges is very different from the way in which you meet those challenges when you are unaware of that dimension. The way in which you respond to these challenges is very different. What these challenges do to you, you're not aware. If there's lack of awareness, then usually when you try to tackle your problems, deal with the challenges of life, you do so in a way that is ultimately not intelligent, that is reactive, and creates further problems. Also, when you're unaware of that transcendent dimension, you tend to magnify problems by your reaction to them. You overreact, but you don't know that. You think it's a very adequate reaction.
Hello.
Hello.
My question is about charisma. It seems to be a phenomenon that we all recognize, but unlike embodying stillness, it doesn't seem to have be intrinsically good or bad. We can say that Nelson Mandela has charisma, but Adolf Hitler must also have had charisma. So my question is, what is the energy or the force behind charisma? Is it something that you're born with? Is it something that you can learn?
Thank you. Thank you. You better sit down. Yes, that's a very strange thing, isn't it? Some people seem to have some kind of emanation, as personal power or something, sometimes people call it. Hitler probably had it, but other people who seem the opposite, on the opposite polarity, also had it. Angela Merkel does not have it. And yet Angela Merkel is better for Germany than Hitler, much better. It seems that some people, at some point, they access something, a source of power, and I believe charisma is a manifestation of what is traditionally called chi or shakti or whatever. It's an inner power that comes and emanates through the person. And you may remember that I wrote somewhere that chi is the bridge between the unmanifested and the world of form. So the unmanifested is totally beyond form, and then out of the unmanifested, form is born, and forms also return into the unmanifested. But as I'm talking about something that is totally beyond words and becomes distorted, of course, and reduced the moment you talk about it, but let's do it anyway. So there's the unmanifested, and then the energy comes out. I would say that's what the beginning of the creative process, the energy that is the creative energy that then goes into creates form in this world, mental formation first, then physical formations. And there we have the energy in its half form-like state and half unformed state, which is chi. And some humans, in some humans, they have access to the chi at they're not just manifestations of it. They can connect with it at an earlier stage. And so it sometimes happens to people who have, for example, Nelson Mandela, if he has charisma, it probably happened because he was in prison for many, many years, which probably forced him to go within very deeply because there was nowhere to go without. So it forced him to go within very deeply, and then there was a source of power that he contacted, which is chi power, and that power then was able to, he manifested that when he left prison, that power is beyond good and evil. There are spiritual teachers who have it very strongly, some of them. But just to be connected to Qi is not a guarantee that you're free of ego. It's only when you go deeper than Qi and touch the unmanifested and realize that who you essentially are is beyond anything that has form, and Qi is already moving into the world of form. That is the only place where the ego dissolves. There are people who are powerful transmitters of Qi and still have a huge ego. There are spiritual teachers where people go to them and they say, "Oh, I can feel his energy." And they get addicted to the energy they feel. They all come and go. It's not a guarantee. It may well be that the teacher is free of ego, but there's no guarantee that he is. And in some cases, it turns out that there's a huge ego. In fact, the ego can become energized and magnified by somebody who touches that halfway power in him or her. It can magnify the ego and make it and then you become a very powerful Genghis Khan or Hitler or, I don't know, Stalin, maybe he also had it, who knows. And everybody listens to you when you speak, and you project this energy, and you influence people and have power over people, and you love it. You love the power you have over people. But in the end, it leads to your destruction. It's like the genie that comes out of the bottle, but in the end, you encounter disaster. If you magnify the ego, the end result is always magnified disaster. You can't have a good outcome if whatever an amplified ego produces will create disaster sooner or later. So that's how Hitler and Stalin and all those people, and it all ended in disaster. So some have it, some don't. Those who are at the deepest level, those who embody the spaciousness, also have an emanation that sometimes is not detected as easily by other humans. You need to be attuned to it to feel it. If Qi can be a very raw energy. There are people who can project Qi through their hands. They can light a fire with their hands. You just project the energy out through your hands. Are you free of ego? Who knows? Maybe not. Maybe your ego loves being able to do that and you build up a big ego. Or maybe you are free. We don't know. But that in itself is not spiritual attainment. It's a great power, but the spiritual only comes in as you go deeper, so that you realize who you are instead of identifying with an energy stream of Qi and think that becomes part of your sense of self, which would be a magnified ego. So if energy moves through you, there is a famous word in siddhis in Indian spirituality. They have a wider vocabulary than we have in the West to describe these phenomena. People who go very deep within and touch and access the transcendent dimension, sometimes they manifest what is in conventional language called supernatural powers. Certain things happen around them, the strangest things. And these in India are called siddhis. They are supernatural powers that are a byproduct, sometimes, but not always, a byproduct of deep spiritual realization. And all the great teachers will tell you that do not pay too much attention to the siddhis, the powers that arise as byproducts of the deepest realization. When they're there, it's fine. They are there. You can acknowledge it, welcome it. If you get attached to them or identify with them, it will lead you back into ego. And the same thing the teacher will tell his followers, don't get too attached if you observe certain powers arising. That's ultimately not it. It's a byproduct, no more. It is not to develop certain powers is not the end, the aim of spiritual awakening. It's a byproduct sometimes of spiritual awakening. So that's important to realize, and all true teachers will tell you that. So if I appear to you in two places simultaneously, if I'm here and then somebody else sees me in Los Angeles at the same time, don't pay any attention to that. There are some patterns in the mind that everybody inherits, that even for advanced presence practitioners like yourselves can still reassert themselves. Because they are so normal. By the way, my definition of normal is insane, as you probably know. And you may be able to catch yourself many times during the day when one of these normal patterns reasserts itself. And of course, one of the most prevalent patterns is reducing the present moment to a means to an end. It could be a simple thing like you get up in the morning and you're getting ready to go to work. What is the quality of your doing during that time of getting ready to go out? Or here, you got up this morning, getting ready to go to breakfast and then come here. How do you experience that time? Are you able to be present in what you're doing, or is the doing no more than a means to an end? And that's a huge difference, whether you you fold your pajama after and put it on your bed. Do you give it attention? Is it a pleasant thing to do? Do you acknowledge the being of this pajama and feel the texture and give it some loving attention and then you put it away? Or is it, what's the next thing and the next and the next? Because if you're not, if this habit is always there, the present moment is the stepping stone, and not much more than a stepping stone to the next moment, which is always a mental projection, because it never comes. The next moment never comes. Does it? No, I don't think it does, because when the next moment comes, it's the present moment. So the next moment doesn't come, it can never arrive. There's only this moment. But if your habit is to treat this moment most of the time as a means of getting to the next moment, so not being fully in it, but mentally being somewhere else, and then so the basic attitude is, I just need to get this moment out of the way. Then I will get to a better one. And that is a very deep-seated pattern that prevents you from being present. But it's only when I voice it like this that it becomes apparent to you, because otherwise you won't even see it, because it's so normal to live in such a way that unconsciously you don't tell yourself in your mind that I just need to get this moment out of the way because the next one will be better. That is an unspoken and unconscious assumption behind what you do. And it's not only, people also treat entire life periods in that way. Then it's not only, of course, most fundamentally the present moment, but they also treat entire chunks of their life in that way. For example, you're waiting for the weekend, so it's only 2 more days of having to go to work, and then there comes, or you're waiting for something else. Getting a better job, finding the person who is going to make me happy. It's only, in the meantime, I'm just ticking over. I'm just waiting for. What's the expression? I'm waiting for the big break or whatever. I'm waiting for the big thing to happen, and finally I can start living. When that happens, in whatever form that takes, when that happens, then my life will really start. And that's another way, another manifestation of the same dysfunction, reducing an entire chunk of your life to a waiting room. And so for many people, almost their entire life, with very brief episodes that are often connected to falling below thinking, with brief episodes of a little bit of relief, they live in a waiting room, and this somehow, I don't know if anybody remembers, it's probably not popular anymore. There used to be a genre in theater that was called the theater of the absurd. Samuel Beckett and other authors, and often they showed, there was a famous play called Waiting for Godot, and there are two men waiting for this guy to arrive nobody knows who Godot is, but they spent the entire play, it's a theater play, the entire play they're waiting, Godot, who knows, some critics say, well, Godot, Godot, they're waiting for God, but it's not said. But the entire period is spent waiting. And I don't think Godot ever arrives. And they're similar, and this is just to show the absurdity of ultimately everyday life. So you have to be really vigilant to see whether either as concerning the present moment, reducing the present moment to a means to an end, and if you do that habitually, chances are that you also reduce huge chunks of your life to a means to an end or a waiting room. And of course, sometimes life does get better. Of course, it doesn't, if you are now living in unpleasant surroundings, perhaps it's noisy or it's too cold or too warm or cramped or whatever it is. You might have a job that's repetitive, you're waiting to get out of that, feel lonely, one relationship has come to an end, another one hasn't started yet, I'm just waiting. And so you're hoping that things will get better, and sometimes they do get better, but the habit pattern is deeply ingrained, and even if the situation gets better, then you'll be waiting for something else. Because no situation can ever completely satisfy you. No person, no condition, no situation. Waiting for retirement. I can maybe take early retirement, and then what? Play golf, lie on the beach. And many people are very disappointed when they retire and don't know what to do with themselves, and they lose their sense of identity, it was always a false sense of identity because it is derived from their function. But at least they had a false sense of identity, and now they don't have any, and they don't know the possibilities of human life. So be vigilant. If you feel that an improvement is highly desirable in your life situation, that's okay. But it's much more likely to happen if you give more attention to the present moment rather than trying to get away from the present moment or denying it, always making it into a means to an end. If you give more your fullest attention to this moment, the so-called future is much more likely to improve. The so-called future, because there is no future, when it comes, it's the present moment, a little strange paradox, a different